Well, joining me now at the WEDF Forum is the British Minister for State, Gareth Thomas. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Pleasure.
I wanted to ask you first about, you talked about the British government being very active in the promoting the uptake of fair trade and the movement. In what ways are you doing that?
Well, we've done it in a number of ways. We've worked with an NGO, with two NGOs in particular, the Fair Trade Foundation and the Ethical Trading Initiative. Fair Trade Foundation works to bring goods from developing countries into the UK and to make sure that the people who produce them, the farmers, the very poorest people, get a decent wage as a result. And we have provided money to the Fair Trade Foundation to get them started. They've also raised money from other sources. Similarly, with the Ethical Trading Initiative, we've given money to catalyse them, to get them off the ground. And they're a partnership between business, between NGOs and trade unions to encourage business to work better at looking at its supply chain and making sure that the people who produce goods at the end of the supply chain for sale back in the UK are being paid a living wage, have got good health and safety conditions, etc. And there are signs that both the Ethical Trading Initiative and the Fair Trade Foundation are making a difference and are increasingly being looked to for consumers when they make purchasing decisions.
You've described this support as pump priming the market. Would you like to see other governments as actively involved?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that an offshoot of the Fair Trade Foundation, the Fair Trade Labelling Organisation, has been in discussion with various other European governments, and we'd certainly like to see an aggressive expansion by the fair trade movement across the European Union. We'd certainly also be delighted to see the Ethical Trading Initiative expanding its horizons beyond just the UK into other European markets. But we recognise that the Ethical Trading Initiative we need to do more work with to encourage greater take-up by UK businesses. But certainly we want both to move beyond our borders.
And do you want to position the British government to be seen internationally as a fair trade government?
I think so. We've certainly been working in a number of ways to promote fairer trade. Directly with our consumers, but also at an international level, trying to get Europe to agree to reduce its subsidies for its goods, so that in the World Trade Organization talks that are going on at the moment, Europe can help to bring about a deal to get fairer markets for developing countries to send their goods to. And there are a whole series of other ways in which we want to help developing countries build up their ability to trade between themselves in particular, and then into the world's richest markets. Because in the end, that's the only way. Economic growth, increased trade, that's really the only substantial way and long-term way for people to lift their own poor people out of poverty.
And obviously internationally at the moment, it's tricky times financially. What effect do you think the current financial and credit crisis will have on the future of fair trade?
Well, I think I don't believe it will have a long-term impact. I think it might slow down the growth of the market a little, but I think those that invest for the long term will be wanting to invest in a way that is ethical, in a way that encourages fair trade consumers on board. And that's one of the reasons why we're continuing with a forum that we've set up with retailers to encourage them to look at how they can get more of their goods from developing countries, how they can work with the fair trade movement, how they can work with the Ethical Trading Initiative to expand what they do. So there may be a short-term impact, but I don't believe there'll be a long-term impact.
And what is the message business is giving back to you? Are they as buoyant and positive as you are?
I think at a senior level there is increasing support for fair trade, for playing a role to help developing countries, for ethical trading initiatives. There were over 70 business leaders who turned up to Gordon Brown's call to action to help achieve the Millennium Development Goals, many of them making new initiatives to help promote poverty reduction through their core business activities. And we're working very directly with a number of retailers through a Procurement for Development Forum to try and help them get better access to goods that are suitable for sale in the UK that can be sourced from developing countries.
And we've also heard from some producers today that it's the export red tape and the bureaucracy that sometimes, stalls any of their initiatives. What are you doing to help those sorts of producers?
Well, we provide what's called capacity building support to a variety of organisations, not least the International Trade Centre, but also through the Fair Trade Foundation, for example, and others, to help developing country farmers, developing country businesses get the certification that they need to be able to sell their goods into the EU's market, the UK's market, and others. Clearly, we need to do more of that, and we do need to try and simplify procedures if we can do. So we'll continue to fund that sort of trade capacity support.
And you also stated that your long-term aim is that eventually all trade will become ethical. How far into the future do you think that goal is?
Well, if that's to happen, we'll need developing country governments to fulfil their part of the bargain. That means promoting good governance. That means them helping to make sure there are good health and safety standards in their factories, that their workers are paid a living wage. I think that is a message which is increasingly understood in some developing countries. In others, clearly it isn't getting home yet. So we're some way off that ambition. But I think we need to have that long-term goal if we're to continue to grow that conscientious consumerism which the ITC has been focusing on today.
And who do you think will be the main driver of that movement?
I think in the end it will be consumers. I think what we're seeing in Britain is consumers increasingly saying, okay, where is my food coming from? And what difference is that making for the person who produces that food? Where's the shirt or the skirt or the blouse that I'm wearing, where's that made from? And what are the wages of the person who's making that? Is it fair? Is it fairly produced? Is that person getting a decent wage? And I think that trend is going to grow. People, of course, are always going to want value for money, but I think increasingly people are going to want to know that the goods they're wearing have not been produced by exploiting people further down the supply chain.